Hey guys, I'm Jax, and I just got back from watching an exclusive sneak preview of Season 1, Episode 7 of Hellboy. This episode was titled The Crooked Man. So, should you go and pay your hard-earned money at the cinemas to watch this random episode of TV with unlikable characters that have absolutely no charisma and no chemistry together as they stumble through a generic Monster of the Week episode with terrible effects and worse acting? No. So this film is the fourth Hellboy live-action film and is the third different Hellboy that we have gotten. And despite the fact I would have absolutely loved to see a second David Harbour Hellboy film, I was still very interested in this movie because they were going to do something super fresh, unique, and different. This film was going to take it in a completely new direction. Small scale, lower budget. It's a creepy thing in the woods film. But also just like Hellboy's there. Sign me up. But unfortunately, Crooked Man is a dull, lifeless, unimaginative slog. It feels like a bad episode of Supernatural, but replace the charming, charismatic, lovable Winchester brothers doing the mission, and instead we get a dull, unfunny, random guy dressed in Hellboy cosplay. The film's setup is interesting. I very much enjoy and respect the absolutely bold decision to just throw us into the middle of the story. There's no origin, there's no setup, there's no backstory. It is just like throwing them in the middle of the woods. There's two paranormal detective kind of people and they're in a spooky woods situation. Oh, and one of them is a Hellboy. He's big, he's red, he's got giant horns and he shaved them off. He's a big demon thing. Deal with it. Also, sorry, I said he's big and he's red. That is incorrect. He is big-ish. He isn't red. Like, not red. More of like a, how do you describe it? A Snyder red? A dull red. Desaturated red. More of like a very bright reddish grey? Hellboy's design in this film I was absolutely not a fan of at all. This one feels so stripped back from the David Harbour one, intentionally, because it's got all the bumps and the gnarls and the things going on. And so I do understand like the idea of like, well, we went too far one way that time, let's strip it back. But they stripped it so far back that it just feels like they've painted a guy with very bright reddish grey paint on his face. Like, at no point in this film was I like, that's Hellboy. I was just like, that's that actor who's wearing really good Hellboy cosplay, but Hellboy cosplay. But also, I don't love his performance, unfortunately. And you know what? I feel like I've been way too mean. He is probably the highlight of the film, somehow, I guess. I didn't really like him that much. Everyone else is so much worse though. So one of the very big differences in this film is that it is a low budget film. They stripped the budget back and they are telling a small scale story. A little Monster of the Week episode. Hellboy versus the Crooked Man in the woods. There's no backstory about the paranormal agency he works for, his father, his backstory, none of that stuff. It's just a big demon with a big fist who's grayish red and like he's fighting a crooked man in the forest. That's all it is. And in theory, on paper, I love that so much. I absolutely love that this is the third Hellboy and the fourth Hellboy film. We know who Hellboy is. And if you don't, I'm sorry, keep up. Maybe 5 minutes in, just get your phone out and Google, like, who's Hellboy? And you'll be able to figure it out. But it's kind of like, we're at this point now in Hellboy, in like the cinematic just language of cinema or whatever, that like Hellboy can just like jump into a story and do a mission. And I think that's really fun and cool and exciting. And I actually, like, in theory, if the film was good, I would have been talking about how amazing this is. It's like a good episode of Supernatural. I don't even need the Winchesters. Although imagine the Winchesters and Hellboy teaming up. Oh my god, that would have been maybe the greatest thing of all time. Oh my god, I hate this film more now. But in the execution of the film, the low budget, small scale like aspects of the film don't really work a lot of the time because the script somehow, in a baffling choice, the script still demands certain moments have a big budget, which this film does not have. The opening of this film, and this isn't a spoiler, but also who cares, but the opening shot of this film is of the wheels of the train or whatever, and they're all like moving, and it's just this horrendous cartoonish CGI train close up on the wheels. It looks disgusting. And the entire first sequence is like a train crashing and a giant, a CGI train crashing and collapsing through a forest, and a giant CGI spider breaking free and running amok, and there's a big action set piece. And I say this with no exaggeration, no hyperbole. It's probably the worst visual effects I've ever seen in a movie. So bad, so embarrassingly bad. It just threw me. It completely took me off balance. It starts and I'm like, isn't this just meant to be a low, small scale story about a big demon in the woods with witches? The visual effects was so bad and so jarring and so cartoonish and just vibrantly awful. They just stood out so horrendously on the screen. And I'm not trying to throw shade to any of the visual effects artists. They clearly didn't have the time or the money. But it's the rest of the film is so not like that. I feel the only way I can describe is how jarring it is to the rest of the film and its style and its tone and its mood is imagine the Blair Witch Project. And you know how they're on the woods, they're oh, we're in the woods, found footage, and it's spooky, and it's very real and authentic and raw. Imagine if the reason they got into the woods was a giant CGI train just stumbled and smashed and crashed through the forest, and they got out of this cartoonish Roger Rabbit train, and then the Blair Witch Project started. That's how bad it was. Because I knew what type of film it was going to be. And so it just threw me, and it took me ages to recorrect my brain to accept what the film was going to be now. And there's one other moment with a snake that also looks very, very bad. But at least what the snake's doing and what's happening in that scene is very part of the movie and its style and its mood and its tone and its atmosphere. And it fits. And maybe they should just cut that whole first 15 minutes and put the money into making that snake not look terrible. I feel like I'm making it sound like that first scene, it changed my entire opinion of the film. And I couldn't get past that. I did. The first 5-10 minutes of the film after the horrible opening, the interesting setup, and it's almost great. We're in the creepy woods, something's going on. Hellboy can hear something that his partner can't because she's just some not demon hellspawn human. She doesn't know what's going on. Creepy, crooked men's going on, and there's spooky stuff, and you're meeting weirdos and witches in the woods. And it's all pretty authentic and real, and they're in real woods, and it's a pretty interesting setup. And then the next hour is just the most generic, cliche, boring, tired tropes, just nothing. So boring. There's no good action, there's no good scares. It's not scary whatsoever. The Crooked Man is not scary. The movie is not scary. I just feel like I've seen it a million times in better ways. And all of this would be not okay, but every single issue I've said, every single thing, the editing being choppy and bad and weird, the sounds and the score being overbearing and generic and just tired and just it feels like it's trying to force the fear into you by just being very loud and obnoxious because nothing scary is actually happening. The lighting, oh my god, the lighting. It doesn't feel like this movie is intentionally dark and really clever lighting using darkness and shadow. It just feels that they're lower the lights so we can pretend this isn't a really cheap set. And the color grade is about as inspired as Hellboy's look. It's so dull, it's so dreary, it's so lifeless, but not in a really kind of inventive, inspired way where you're oh, this color grade is so depressing, intentionally depressing and drab. It just feels so bleh. Every single issue I've said in this film wouldn't matter if the characters were good. The characters are not good. They have no chemistry. They have no charisma. They don't bounce off each other whatsoever. Hellboy is fine, I guess, but his partner is so bad. Her whole thing for the whole movie is just her being oh, this supernatural situation that's happening couldn't possibly be real. Every single time a supernatural thing happens, she's just I don't believe it. That's crazy. That can't possibly be happening. And then she looks to her partner, who she was escorting a giant magical spider, and she looks at her partner. They were escorting a spider, but her partner is a giant demonic hell demon Hellboy thing. He is big and a bright reddish grey colour and a demon. She keeps looking at this demon and being like, this crazy supernatural witch did, like, there's a moment where the witch is like floating. She's like, that's impossible. You're saying it's impossible to your demon partner. What is going on? It's a bad movie, and I genuinely am so upset that I spent 2 hours watching it when I could have spent those 2 hours watching 3 episodes of Supernatural.